Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever Batman You Completely. Oh, I'm going to redo that because I completely screwed up. That's going to go at the end of this episode because it's a blooper.
All right.
Hell, let me get some water. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever Batman You Complete Me episode. My name is Travis Snell, and I'm very, very honored to be joined by this person because this is something we've talked about for a while, Batman Cast. But I needed somebody that, one, loved Batman as much as me, but two, definitely the other side of the coin, because you and I are going to have some great conversations. But it's kind of fitting. Your Twitter name, Bat Daddy 52. Greg, you're here. You're a longtime fan, but we've also worked together many times now at the Geek Ultimate Alliance. How you doing today? And how's it going in general?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, man. And yeah, like you said, Batman is my thing, and I think it's why it's kind of what brought me and you together. Some of what brought me and you together because we love talking about it, and that's why I love Batman so much is that we do have different viewpoints on this character, but we still love him for a lot of the same reasons as well. There's so much to love and so much to sometimes hate about the character, and just finding somebody that can have a different viewpoint and understand that viewpoint, maybe not necessarily agree with it, but understand it, is awesome. That's why I love the Batman. Everybody loves the Batman. He's probably the most popular. Maybe Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man and Batman are probably the two most popular superheroes, maybe across the world.
Yeah, I think so. I'd feel like the list is like those two, Superman, Iron Man right now, but ask me in 10 years where Iron Man is, just because I think it's just because of the movies. But like as of right now, there's tons of kids that I'm trying to think. Wonder Woman, I'd say, is probably next. I'm trying to think. Surprisingly, the last year's Halloween, I think it's growing just because it's a different culture. But I saw so many kids wearing Black Panther costumes for like first time when
Yeah.
that movie came out. So it's so funny to think about when just 20 years ago I saw this Chris and Marvel Alliance, how like the dynamic shift of who's the most popular to who's the not. Like look at Fantastic Four right now. Like I don't think, like, do your kids even know who the Fantastic Four? Like they know, but like not
I
really,
highly
right?
doubt it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I highly doubt
exactly.
it.
We're like, when we were kids, we knew, oh yeah, that's one of Marvel's big things. So it is funny, but Batman has kind of always persisted. It's one of those things where it's just like, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, but next year you got the Snyder Cut, and then you got hopefully with all COVID stuff, but you got Snyder Cut, and then a solo Batman movie. I'm somebody that's like, oh man, I can't wait to get a solo Batman movie, but it is like, we've had so many of them that for me it's like,
Right.
it's just because it's my character. But yeah, that's why this started, because you and I have had so many long Twitter exchanges publicly and like in DMs and whatnot. You and me have so many different views, but we both love the character, and we have a lot of the same views, but just as far as they're handled. So I was always really excited. We've been trying to get this going for a while, so I'm excited. I guess what I should announce is this is going to, as of right now, be a monthly thing. So every month we're going to get together, we're going to meet, we're going to have an in-depth conversation. This is just going to be about just some general, why we love Batman, tell you about what the show is going to be about. But in the next two episodes, right before Fandom, we're going to preview the Robert Pattinson Batman, because I want to get more thoughts on that from you. Plus, it'll be before we get a bunch more news, so we kind of talk about, like, before they tease anything. And then after that, probably maybe the main reason why Greg's on this podcast, because we're going to do the should Batman kill or not, or Batman killing, that whole issue, and which me and Greg have probably talked about in circles over and over again. So because we have very different views on that. But those are the first three, and then throughout the year, I think we're going to do little highlights. We're going to talk about some big stuff. We're going to look back at some other actors. I was going to ask you, we have like a kind of profiles plan of doing like, the Bale era, the Keaton era. Do we do the Affleck era before or after the Snyder Cut?
Ooh, honestly, I think that's something you should say for after the Snyder Cut,
Yeah.
because I think when you get the Snyder Cut, you're going to get a different viewpoint on the Ben Affleck Batman, because he was into it with the Snyder Cut. He was totally out of it after that, for understandable reasons. I mean, there was a lot of things going on in his life, but I think that you're going to get a better view of Batman in the Snyder Cut than you would have, at least the Batfleck in the Snyder Cut, than you would have from the Justice League.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I love his performance in BVS, and in Justice League, for, like you said, many reasons, just felt like he wasn't there. And I was always disappointed when that was going to be our only thing of him, because it just felt like he was checked out. So that's one of the most intriguing. That's probably my most excited thing for the Snyder Cut, is to see more of him, just because I want to see him locked in again and everything like that. So, and I do have to say, because I should have said this a bit more at the beginning, but you are somebody that, whenever someone's on your show, you're always talking them up. So I'm going to take the chance to talk you up a little bit, because so you and I met, I think sometimes probably around BBS time or something like that. I think probably around that. I can't remember, but sometime 2016, 2017, and we got to talking, and you're a listener. And then you always talk about doing your own podcast. You've been doing Super Civil Servants for a year. You've been growing that, and that's really good. And then you're on DC Alliance. But I gotta give you credit because you're somebody from day one when I've listened to you. You've been a great host as far as you're always letting people, you always step back, you're always letting people talk, you're always trying to get them in the conversation. If I've heard, oh, somebody hasn't talked for a while, you bring them in. And I have to say that as somebody, when you just know, when I knew you're talking about starting podcasting to where you are now, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed. I'm pretty proud of how far you've come, because it's been great to see just from afar what you guys have been doing. And obviously now we're working together, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I have to say, fan of doing this with you, and I'm happy for all the success that's coming, hopefully.
Oh, I
Yeah.
appreciate it, man. Shit, you're giving me chills sitting here talking about that. But no, quite honestly, the hosting thing, I learned a lot of that from you, listening to Geekverse podcast and listening to how you handled a bunch of different people on your team and the way you go back and forth with people. And it's honestly, I just kind of try to mimic what you do, man. I'm a product of you as far as
Mhm.
hosting podcasts goes,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you, and it's awesome to work with you now. I was telling my wife this morning, I was kind of a little antsy, and I was looking through my book and taking notes, and she was like, "Man, you are really, really excited." And I was like, "Yeah, I am." I was like, I've been wanting to do this with this guy for a long time because you're one of my big inspirers. And it's so cool how the Batman, these characters and podcasting in general can bring people together like this. I mean, I don't know, 3 days away from me on a car ride if I want, if I wanted to drive that far. So it's insane. But yeah, it's fun, man. I really appreciate the compliment, and I'm ready to do a show with you, man. It's some Batman.
Yeah, so I want to start there. So you're talking about taking notes and everything like that. What is your first, do you have a first memory of like seeing Batman, reading Batman, and when did you kind of realize like, oh, this is my guy? Because you may share that as far as he's my favorite character of all time. It's a cheat. I have him tied with the Joker, but it's just because like for me they're just so entwined. I love them both back and forth. But you may have that in favor as far as our favorite fictional characters. What was your first moment? Like I said, what's your earliest memories of the Batman?
For me, it's not as much comic book reading when I was younger, and I didn't watch Batman the animated series, or if I did, I didn't watch it enough to really kind of understand it. I was a
Mhm.
big Spider-Man guy when I was younger, and Batman were kind of my guys. And I think it's because for me, they're kind of the most relatable characters. Spider-Man not as much as Batman because it's kind of on a different level. Spider-Man because he is, he's younger, he has the younger mindset. You can kind of relate to him like that. But Batman, he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a guy. Like
Mhm.
really, if I was rich and I put enough time and effort into learning how to do this, I could be Batman. It wouldn't be very realistic because I don't know if I could jump off buildings and stuff like that. But you'd like to think you would if you trained yourself to. And there's actually a training regiment, Batman's training regiment, as far as diet, workouts, and everything in this little Bat Bible I have here. And I remember one day I was going to try to follow it when I was really hardcore into working out. A couple of years back, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try to follow that. It's impossible. It's impossible to live a real life
Yeah.
and to follow that regiment. But you know being younger, I had a friend who would always run around screaming, "I am Batman! I am Batman! I am Batman!" And I always thought it was funny, and I just grew to love the character. I love his look. I love his mindset. I mean, I'm trying to think. I can't think of the first comic that I ever read with him. I know probably one of the oldest ones that I've read that I like. Well, not oldest that I've read that I enjoy and can take memory is, of course, Dark Knight Returns.
Mhm.
It's probably my favorite comic of that. Maybe because it goes back to when I was younger, but I just love I love the mindset of it. It's a different kind of comic. It's not Batman like normal. It's a different story, a different take on Batman. It's Batman older, Batman retired. It's something you didn't normally see. It
Ah,
makes him more real.
this
You know,
explains all the BVS Snyder love. I can see it right
mm,
now. I can see
yeah,
the parallels. Yeah,
part of it.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, it was, I think, honestly, it was Keaton. The animated series had a lot to do with it, but Keaton was the first ones I had seen. My very first ever Batman theater experience was Batman and Robin, so take that for what it was. But I was smaller and
Mm,
I loved it back then. And
me
I,
too.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of like every character for me. I always say initially it's just the look, right? He just has a very defining look, very big presence, that cowl, and majority of costumes, speaking of Batman Raw, maybe not the bat nipples, but majority of costumes all look good, which we'll talk about later. But I just think it is kind of like things you point out where it was just a guy, and it is this fact of, okay, this guy loses parents and what does he do next? And to me, that was always relatable because I don't know if I could become a, like you said with the Batman Bible, as far as following that regiment. But if you put yourself in that situation of you losing somebody, you'd have to think, okay, what would it do to you mentally? And that's one of my favorite things about Batman, where he is a superhero, but he's kind of still not all there for obvious reasons, right? He's lost a lot. He's been through a lot. He continues to go through a lot, whether it's one of the many Robins dying or Catwoman's breaking up with him for the 100th time. Like he has a life where it's he can never find that normalcy, but sometimes it's kind of his fault that you can't find the normalcy. There'll always be a
Right.
path, but it's like, no, the Batman door is a bit more appealing to him. So it's just, I love that type of Batman. And honestly, it's a character that even with the Robert Pattinson Batman coming up, and then all the way to 66, we have so many renditions and so many takes. That's I'm kind of happy with, because there's just so much. There's like a buffet of Batman now. There's so many characters that they only have this one shot and that's it. Like there's only one Elektra movie out there somewhere, and not many people love it. But we're kind of lucky that for our character, and I think because of the character, it is just that thing where I'm trying to think of a hero that is more relatable than Batman. Like even someone like Tony Stark, who is a normal man. I've never had to deal with alcoholism, so that's the thing where I think some people, that's not a thing. And even then, he's like very high techy and stuff like that. Like Peter Parker, I think you're right, but then even to a point, it's like, well, I don't have these powers, I don't have
Right.
this, so it's just like there's always something where Batman it is like you said, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. It's highly unrealistic that you could do, but still in your mind somewhere, you're like, if I had enough money and enough time and no connections to this earth whatsoever, I could be this person. And I think that why it is the most relatable. And I think that's how somehow, even when he's fighting people like a Clayface, they've the best comics or stories or whatnot managed to still keep that relatability. Even when he's fighting Darkseid or Human Crocodile, you still feel for the guy, even though it doesn't make much sense. Like I said, I imagine he could train and be the highest priority. I don't know if he could take on these space god aliens, but then you're just looking at, well, he's the peak, the definition of the human body. He's the smartest, he's the most fit, he's the has all the money in the world. So as far as Batman, I've loved him my whole life, and I think I will continue to. It's just a character that I'm still always drawn to, and there's always still stuff like I know you and me are both fans of like the Batman Who Laughs. There's still stuff over all these years that are changing and still unique to the character. Eventually you would
Hmm.
think, oh, the well's gonna dry out, but then you get a new comic artist or comic writer, and they create something. You get a new filmmaker, so that's the one thing where I feel like lots of people, we've been really lucky that we've got lots of people that truly love the character and have taken it in different ways. And I'm always excited to see more. Whether I like it or not, who knows? But I'm always excited to see more. So
Yeah.
anything to add on that, or you want to get to some of these statements
Well,
or
no,
questions?
just to add on that, when I was younger, I know when the Batman '89 came out, I wasn't allowed to watch it. Like,
Oh,
my dad wouldn't let me watch it because he said it was too adult for me. So I did eventually watch it, but the first real experience for me with Batman was Batman Returns with Keaton and Catwoman, and
the
Catwoman's
even
one of my
darker
favorites. So I
one.
love the even darker one. Yeah, but I was a little bit older then.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was younger, I loved that movie. I still like that movie, and opinions of things change because I know that when Batman and Robin came out, Batman Forever, I saw those in theaters. I absolutely loved them when I was younger. I absolutely loved them. Now I watch them again. I'm like, wow, this is hot garbage. But
Mhm.
it's hot garbage that I'll still watch. If it's on TV, I'll still watch. I think Batman Forever was on the other day, and I hit record because I was like, I'm not going to watch it right now, but I'm definitely going to watch that sometime. Even though I know it's kind of a garbage movie, I was like, I kind of want to go back and see it. It's just even a bad Batman is still fun. And I love that there's so many different portrayals of this character that if you don't like this one, you still have this one to go to. And even if you don't like maybe the way this one looks, maybe the story is good. Like it doesn't ruin it for you the way you don't like this Batmobile. It's okay. The story's still good type deal. Batman's just so versatile, man.
Mhm. Is that what you keep telling yourself? Rob Pattinson, the suit, the movie, like, oh, it might not look good, but that story, hopefully,
That's what
it's
I'm telling myself. Yep.
yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, Batman, that's a good analogy as far as like all that bad stuff, because to me, it's exactly like pizza. It doesn't matter what type of pizza for the most part. If it's bad pizza, it's like, it's still pizza. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's like I still, when I watch the Keaton ones, I still watch lots of times. I'll watch all four together, like the Val Kilmer ones and the Clooney one. Kind of like, oh, well, it's part of the set, Like even if Flashpoint changes all that continuity wise, if that happens, it's like, yeah, there's still these Batman films and there's still things about them. Like, Batman and Robin, I don't know how many things there is about it that I can really enjoy, but I enjoy just the like how obscene it is, and just the fact that a movie that exists. And I always tell myself that I'm very happy it exists, because if it didn't exist, we wouldn't have got like Batman Begins and the Nolan ones, right? Because they would have just kept making those type of ones if it was very
Right.
successful. So yeah, oh boy, that movie. I gotta watch that again. But yeah, for me as well, the animated series did take off, and I think I didn't read comics. I'm trying to think for a little bit till I was older, but like I've always said on Marvel Lines, my cousins had a bunch of comics, and majority of them were X-Men and Batman, and those are kind of my two favorites as far as
Mhm.
comic books, and I've kind of gleaned onto them. But I kind of read those when I was a bit older. But then, yeah, after the movies was the animated series, and I was at the point where there was, I think it was ran quite a bit, so they would just do like marathons and whatnot. So I remember just having VHS tapes everywhere of just, oh, these episodes, these episodes. So, and what I was going to ask you though is, what do you oh, because you're talking about returns, which one do you prefer before the 80 or the 89 ones, the 89 Jack Nicholson one or the returns one?
You mean of those two?
Yeah, those
Oh,
two. Yeah.
Returns.
Yeah,
Returns for sure.
really.
Yeah, even though I'm not a big fan of the way they did the Penguin in that movie, just because they try to make it too comic booky. I mean, he didn't do a terrible job. I'm a huge Catwoman fan, and
Mhm.
Pfeiffer as Catwoman, wow, awesome
Yeah,
suit.
I'm in that camp too. Just and it's funny. I feel like that camp is growing more over the years because for all majority of my life, maybe up until about 3 years ago, I was like, oh well, it has to be the first one. You know, like Jack Nicholson's good as the Joker, and it's like it's not an origin movie, but it's that first one. It's like, oh, this one's just so special. And you're right, Returns does get like it gets pretty weird. It gets pretty burdeny. But when I watch them back to back, I don't even know. Like I like the characters more, but even just the pacing of the movie, I find myself more locked in. Where Batman '89, there's times where I kind of you know not sleep off, but I'm just like, okay, this is a scene that I don't really care about. Like there's some of the Joker's goons and thugs and stuff. I'm like, okay, this is fine. This is the same stuff we've seen in any comic movie. But yeah, Returns, that's good to hear because I've heard, like I said, that seems to be growing a bit more. Before it was always 89, 89, 89, and Returns was so weird. But I feel like maybe people are appreciating how different it is. And like you said, Catwoman is phenomenal in that.
Mhm.
It's tough to for me, anyone to even top that. I definitely she does go a bit more on the really wild, crazy side, but I thought it was like a great balance. So I
Yeah.
love that movie so much.
I think with the '89 Batman, I think people kind of get entrenched with that, like they do politics or religion, where this is what I've decided is the best, and no matter what happens in the future, it'll never change.
Yeah.
It's just because some people are just kind of set in those kind of ways, and I don't not knocking politics or religion. I'm just saying most people are kind of set in their ways with that, and maybe that kind of is the way a lot of people are, because I know some people, like I can look at Batman '89 and I can say, okay, like Batman '89 is a good movie, but are you really telling me that the Nolan trilogy wasn't better than that movie, or Batfleck wasn't better than that? I mean, just because you say something's better doesn't mean you're trashing that movie. It just
Yeah.
you got at some point in time be like, okay, there's no way you can say that Dark Knight is better than, or is not as good as Batman '89, just in my opinion. But of course, it's my opinion.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I agree with you on the Nolan stuff. Batfleck.
of
We're
course,
gonna
yeah.
have to talk about that's and that's. Let's get into some of these questions. So I want to talk to you because I think I might know the question. To this one, what is your favorite Batman movie? And this is good to set the stage for everybody. I know the question to this, but for people that may not know on the Geekverse feed or anything like that, what is your favorite movie and why is it? If you follow Greg, this is you already know the question, but
Yeah. Of course, it's BVS Ultimate
mm,
Edition. I got to say Ultimate Edition in there because it does change the movie up quite a bit. Not, I would say not nearly as much as the Snyder Cut and Justice League movie is going to be changed,
yeah.
but it does give some key points in that movie that people have complained about that movie that are actually in the Ultimate Edition. That if you haven't given it a chance, check that out. But I love BVS. It's honestly, it's probably not even just my favorite Batman movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. I've probably watched that movie more than any other movie in my life. I love the character. It's drawn a lot from my favorite Batman comic book. It's a combination of a lot of different comic books, but it's drawn mainly from Dark Knight Returns, and just the way Ben Affleck portrays that character,
Hmm.
Bruce Wayne and Batman. It just for me is amazing. I love the way the suit looks because I've never been a big armored suit guy. Even though there are certain situations where you have an armored suit, I know what you're going to say is, oh, what about the big armored suit at the end? But that's a specialty suit. I mean,
Yeah.
just his basic suit. Most suits, I mean, most of the time in the comics, you don't see a highly armored suit. You see a cloth suit or some kind of material that's more form fitting, which is kind of why I like it better than Nolan's that Batman suit or Christian Bale's Batman suit.
Yeah.
I don't dislike his suit, but because of that, I like it a lot better. And for me, it just looks a lot more intimidating, man. I like a big brooding Batman. There's that one gif of him at the end of the movie where he's walking up behind the flames, and you just kind of just the lighting's perfect because Zack Snyder does
Hmm.
such a great job with that, man. It is the most intimidating look of Batman ever. I don't care what you say. You can put any Batman live action up against that, and that's the guy I'm running from first. You know, like
Yeah.
he's just amazing. And for me, that instills what Batman is, because he even says it in the Nolan trilogy, like he's a symbol. He's supposed to instill fear in the hearts of people. And that's part of what he does, why he is the Batman, why he's so successful. And that's what was kind of portrayed in the BVS version of him, in my opinion. Plus, I love the story. You know, I love the writing. A lot of people don't get a lot of things about that movie. I don't think it's they don't get it. Maybe they don't get it. Some people don't want to get it, and it's fine. You don't have to like the movie, but I feel like there are some things people miss that are somewhat that are pretty obvious to me. But maybe it's just me, maybe looking at it differently. Maybe I can see it a little better than them. But a lot of times when you go into a movie with a certain mindset, you're going to come out of it the same mindset. It's going to take a lot to blow you away, and if it didn't blow you away, you might not have liked the idea beforehand, or maybe it wasn't what you expected. But for me, man, BVS is right where it's at. That's my Batman. Even though I know it's not a typical Batman. It's Batman with a story arc. And if you don't understand the story arc of where he was in that movie, then you're not going to like it, because I don't want Batman to be a killer. I don't want him to use guns. I don't want him to be to brand people. But they needed that for that story arc. They needed to bring him down to that point so they could raise him up, and that was that character development. And I'll bring up the Martha moment, which I know everybody hates the Martha moment, even because it's everybody's like, oh, all I got to do is say my mom's name is Martha, and it changes everything. That's not the point of it. The point of that is the realization that he is a human. That's the point of that movie, is that Martha moment. He realizes that he has a mother, and oh crap, it's the same mother. If it had been a different name, if mother's name would have been Jane, like save Jane, that wouldn't have resonated nearly as well as hearing what your mother's voice is, especially with everything that's been going on with him in the movie. You killed your family, all the stuff that Lex Luthor's been sending him. Like it just fits so perfectly. I know a bunch of people hate that moment. I love that moment, because that is the moment right there where he starts to rise back up as Batman should be. And I love that movie, man. I'm probably going to watch it whenever we get out of here now that you're talking about it so much.
You found a way at last time. So I think it was a few weeks ago I had sent you that gif of the Martha, and you're like, oh, I can explain this. And I was waiting for when you're going to jump in there. So it's funny. I'll say two things. One, when was the last time you referred to your mom by name, Greg?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know.
And then here's my other thing too. If you go back to the very first review I did for BVS, it's so funny because I think we talked about that moment for less than 5 minutes. I was kind of not taken aback, but I understand both sides of why people love it and then people dislike it. I'm somewhere where I'm in the middle, where I'm like, I understand what they're going for and I liked it. I think you could have done a little bit better, but at the same point, that was never a sticking point to me. That was never my kind of, like, as they say, cross to die on. I didn't get why that was such a huge thing. I kind of get from the memes as far as people like, why'd you say that name? But Bale has that too, right? Every Batman has like a meme you could like throw out and be like, oh, this is kind of a funny line. And like, but that's something that never really bothered me to a big point, because I got it. But like I said, I understand both sides, and I think I'm always just on the camp of why, Superman should have led with that. That's the first thing you say is,
I agree with you on that.
Yo, my mom, and that, but I'm excited one day to talk about BVS, because Travis Hines, your co-host of Superhero Discussions and DC Alliance, he thinks I'm a complete madman when I say the Ultimate Cut didn't make that movie any better. I think it made it like inches better, but nothing to the extent where I'm like, oh, I like the movie. I still watch it quite a bit. Like we talk about Batman movies, I watch it. I've had more problems with that movie, but I just love Ben Affleck in that movie so much. Yeah. I think if we could have got a solo Batman movie, that's why for me it's even. I remember after Civil War, everyone was like, oh man, Tom Holland's the best. Tom Holland's the best. I went, well, I got to see a solo film. And I do think that. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man now, but it's like, I need to see a solo film. And I have Bale as my favorite, but I want, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I want to see a solo Ben Affleck Batman so bad, because especially if it would have been directed and written by him, because I've been interested to see what he's done. Again, I'm not the biggest take of that character. If people know if you're on the GV feed, so I have some issues with some of the. I never have the problem as far as the murdering, because we've talked about Batman has like killed before and whatnot. Maybe more manslaughter. This Batman's a bit of a brute, but for me it was I needed a little bit more to see some of that previous Batman, whether it was a flashback or this is the thing, and this is why again your boys are gonna be. They're hot in their chair right now. So many people throw at me like, oh, him and Alfred talk about it. They have two conversations. Alfred's like, hey, you're being real bad. And then Bruce is like, well, they've always been criminals. And then Alfred's like, yeah, but things have changed. He throws down a Superman poster and we move along. I always wanted that idea of, and that's why some people, I don't know if we needed that, but I maybe sometimes do wish that we had that solo Batman film before
Mhm.
Superman and BVS, right? Just to see, okay, what was he like? And then Superman shows up, and then why? And here's a question, because now, we're, as you say, chasing a squirrel. If he's in this mode where he's just like mowing down people, why is Joker still alive? And I have these answers, but I just like to talk to you because we could talk about this not in a text bubble, stuff like that. Why are some of these villains still alive if at this point he is just like a reign on society?
Well, from Batman vs Superman, we don't know if any villains are alive. There's no mention of the Joker. The only mention of any other villains is exploding wind-up penguins, right?
The Joker's alive. What? So you think that
We,
between Suicide Squad?
okay. Sorry. I didn't think about that little. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Well, to I don't know. You that might be a plot hole right there. You're right. But why they're still alive? But I mean, I don't think Batman's ever going to kill the Joker. Well, yeah, we'll
No,
see
I
what
don't think
happens
so
when he
either.
does.
He'll make
But
every excuse. One of my favorite videos the past few weeks was like, oh, it was a top, or the word said, oh, Joker's escaped, and it just shows him putting him away, and then it's like criminal with just a dime of weed, and he's just like beating him to a pulp, and that's the thing where it is just like the Joker. There is something there. We never got to know that story, unfortunately, with Jared Leto's Joker and whatnot. But most of the Batman and Joker stories, to me, it's like even the most brutal Batman won't kill him because most of the stories he created him in a like by accident, right? So he kind of
mhm,
feels responsible. So it's like no matter what, even after he kills a Robin, it's like, well, I can't kill the Joker because I create him. Even though there's takes of the Joker that are like, well, he might not be insane, he might just be faking it. So you could just get rid of him, but he's always like, no, I don't want to do this. Like
mhm.
I can't kill him. He's just that's the
Oh yeah.
kind of the mental stuff I like with Batman.
Well, and I think you raised a really good point too about the Batman. Like they should have done. I don't say they should have because I like the way they went with it, but I think
Mhm.
they could have been more popular with the general audience had they done a Batman movie before they did Batman versus Superman. Because most to like you said, to put him in that state, to show people how he got there, why he's like that. And you don't have to give the whole history, but you're right. Flashbacks, give them an idea of why this guy's like this, and end it with the scene you open with in Batman versus Superman, where the flashback of the fight, the Zod fight in that
Yeah.
movie there, and then you have the Man of Steel movie, and then or vice versa, and then you have the Batman versus Superman. Because I think this movie, if you're a comic book fan and you've studied the character and you have read a lot of his comics, you realize there are ups and downs, there are ebbs and flows with his character, his personality. He's gone through a lot of stuff. If you're a general audience member, you see Batman as a hero that stands for this and is good, and when you see him at the screen that time as not this guy, you're like, well, this guy doesn't get the character, even
Yeah.
though he gets the character really well. It's just a different take on the character that most people haven't put out there yet. I mean, I
Well,
think
and
most general audience remembers George Clooney, Val Kilmer,
yeah,
Michael
yeah.
Keaton, even Christian Bale, who did a fantastic job. I love those movies. Are a different take on that character. I mean, even Christian Bale's or Nolan's character, Batman, pulls from a lot of these comics and a lot of different stories. They did
Mhm.
a great job with it. It's just a different take on it, but I don't think the general audience is ready for that. Now,
Well,
had they been able to see the story continued, they may have understood it a little more, which hopefully they're going to in the future. So we'll see what happens.
yeah, well, you bring up a good point that's first of all, I would have loved if we had got a Batman movie with Ben Affleck and they had not even said anything about BVS. And imagine if it ended with that Superman thing, like they kept that a secret and we didn't know that was coming. And the movie, Ben Affleck's Batman movie, ends like, oh great, and it kind of jumps, it like fades to black, and then it comes up with him in Metropolis, and then that would have been the announcement of BVS. Not taking away the Comic Con announcement because that was still, I still watch that clip a lot, that BVS announcement, because man, the crowd is just, you want to hear a crowd on fire. And I
Mhm.
remember, as somebody that was not the biggest Man of Steel fan, I remember being like, I'm not done with the universe because I'm a comic book whore. I'll kind of watch any comic book movie. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing, like, I'm gonna be like that way until I die. So it's like, there's even times like Chris has told me like he hasn't seen Dark Phoenix. It's like I knew going in that was gonna be a really bad X-Men movie, but you know what? I paid my money. Like, okay, I'm gonna watch this X-Men movie because
Mhm.
it's a comic book movie, and I'll always support them. So I remember when Man of Steel 2 was coming top, I was like, oh, I don't know how excited I am, but then they dropped that logo at Comic Con. You saw the video of Batman vs Superman, and that was great. And then Ben Affleck was such a left field cast, which I was actually a fan of. You can go back. I didn't understand kind of the pushback. Unfortunately, we never got it. I was the biggest fan of it because I was excited that he could direct one day. And like you said, you never know what could happen. But as of right now, it's not on the table. But I think with the and that's what I like. You and I can talk about this because you can talk about Ben Affleck, but even then when you said I love the character, but there's things you could have done. I'm the same with Christian Bale, where I love Christian Bale. That's my Batman. My favorite movie is Dark Knight. But and something like even Dark Knight Rises is a movie I love. I defend all the time, but you're never gonna put me in a corner and I'll tell you, oh, there's absolutely zero problems with that movie. Like that's the thing where I can I can love that, and that's where I think there's fans on both sides, whether it's your fans, it's like the snark fans, or fans that are against that. Some people just go, oh, well, everything about that Batman is bad and it sucks, or everything about that Batman is great. And that's why I love you and I've always been able to talk like in layers as far as like, well, either defend an opinion, or it's like, oh, I do love this, but I still wish this could have been done a bit better. Because
Right.
if you had, let's say if Ben Affleck didn't come in Christian Bale's Batman, that's always been my point. Like it wouldn't have worked as far as the universe, right? They made it really realistic, but with Christian Bale's Batman, you had 3 films establishing he doesn't kill. Is there some dodgy areas, especially with Ra's al Ghul and Batman Begins? Exactly. What is the definition of I won't save you, but I won't kill you, but I
Right.
don't have to save you? It's very loose. I give him the pass because I'm like, oh yeah, if you would have picked him up, he probably would have tried to kill you. So it's like that would have almost been suicide. But for some people, like he just murdered him. Okay, you can make that argument, and I see your point. But in that, and I think that was the thing too, where with BVS, it went so hard in the other direction where you had like when we're talking about the general audience, when they're like, oh, Batman doesn't kill, Batman doesn't kill. And like you said, when you look into it, there's times where he takes lives in those movies. I always give him the pass because for me, especially in Dark Knight Rises, he is at one point he's in the bat and he's just blowing up vehicles. I completely see this, but I always say it's kind of like BVS in the nightmare sequence. I always give Batman the pass for killing in those situations because it's like, well, if it's you have to kill a person or the world's gonna end, you got to kill that person. Where
Right.
there's times where it is just like thugs. That's why even in the Martha scene when he goes to save him, there's some like it is a great scene, but like even stuff like when he throws the box against the guy's head, I go, oh, my Batman I always wish is like he's kind of like a James Bond, Ethan Hunt thing where he doesn't have to kill you because he's so smart he could find a way to outmaneuver, where that Batman he's just a tank, and that's completely fine. But I think with the general audience with BVS was just like, okay, you had for almost a decade this Batman talking about how much he doesn't kill, and the general audience has probably seen this movie one or twice, right? The Bale ones, they're not watching
Right.
over like we did, so in their mind they just go Batman doesn't kill. And that was all honestly me to an extent too, because after BVS, I really had to look at myself and be like, there is times where Batman kills or is more violent, and you just kind of go with, well, you and I have talked about this before. When everyone says, "Oh, well, Batman doesn't do this," there's like 50 million versions of Batman. Who's Batman?
Mhm.
Look at the original Bob Kane one that ran around with a gun and had like this weird cape. It's like technically that should be Batman, right? Every change is a change of them. It's like the Star Wars films. People complain all the time, but it's like technically they're all fan films without George Lucas. If he's not
Mhm.
around doing this, it's like it's not his vision anymore. So if it's not that OG 40s comic, all these are just different renditions. So that's why I've stopped saying that, oh, that's not Batman. I can say that's not my Batman, but I think that's what people have to realize. And as far as my favorite movie, it's The Dark Knight. I got to see it again in theaters recently, which was lots of fun. And that was a movie that I've had great experiences in theaters since then. Like I Endgame and Infinity War, two of those ones that I always throw up there. But and Star Wars Force Awakens was another one seeing that opening night. But that was a movie that kind of I think really made me love film and made me want to even do stuff with film in the future. And I just that
Right.
for me is, and I understand there's people's different takes as far as they like maybe the more comic based Batman where he can fight fantastical stuff like a Clayface like we talked about earlier. But I loved the scope of the movie. I loved how serious it took, like looked at the genre, and I think that's the biggest thing too. Is I think without that movie we wouldn't have got a lot of other comic book movies because I think that was the first movie that I could sense other people that didn't like comic books starting to like these movies. It brought them
Right.
in. It felt like, okay, I don't have to be, it wasn't being looked down upon of like, oh, this schlocky, like, cheesy one line or cheesy villain. Like everything was really thought out. Everything was really well done. It's well acted. It's well directed. And it's one of those movies that I still think people, I am that person, but many people always, when a new comic movie comes out, they go, "Oh, where does it compare to The Dark Knight or something like that?" Because I think even just not as like a Batman film, just the scope of that film and how kind of epic Nolan made, and not in the epic in the sense, oh, that's epic, but just like everything as far as character and as far as cinematography and acting and writing, it felt like it took a different vibe. As far as other movies we talked about before, Returns is one of my favorites, and I'm not sure if you've seen this because you're learning on the anime one. Have you seen Batman Mask of the Phantasm?
Is Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have because I've
Mhm.
watched all the I think, was it 15 or 14 movies in that continuity? And I don't know if that's in that continuity or not. But if it
I,
is,
the,
I've seen it. I'm actually going back and reviewing all of them here in about a week. So I've got to kind of re-educate myself with them. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that one.
Okay, that one's from the '90s. That's like based off the original animated series. That one, but
Okay.
if you haven't seen it, we will watch it in the next few years or whatnot, and it's really good. So those are some of my movies. But yeah, no, I'm excited down the line when we talk about all this stuff because already we're
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about there with the killing too, it's even splitting really fine hairs too, because like you said, there are different versions of Batman, and I mean, like you said, the original Batman, like the first one, the Bob Kane, Bill Finger Batman was I guess that's the OG, and everything that strays from that is not technically what Batman was meant to
yeah
be, because by definition, and this is from Bob Kane, is Batman is a dark garb vigilante who pursues his own brand of justice and exhibits a cruel edge. Like that's his that was his whenever he pitched it to
mhm.
to DC Comics or Action Comics. That was what his pitch was, And it was actually only in like a 2-page story that was mixed in with a bunch of other stories, and it became so popular they decided to make his own character or make his own comic book. And actually, in his first comic book, he does kill a character named
Oh yeah.
Alfred Snyder. He pushes him over the edge and into an acid vault, like
I
pushes
forgot
like
his
so.
name was Snyder. That is kind of funny
Or
when
no,
people
excuse me,
talk.
Stryker. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
not Snyder.
I was like, that is some weird coincidence. If you always
Yeah,
giving Zach big trouble for killing people, it's like, oh, the first thing Batman killed was Snyder. You know?
payback. That's what he was
Yeah,
doing. Payback.
yeah.
But no, I mean, and like I said, it's kind of split and fine here because I feel like there's a difference between the no gun rule and the no killing rule.
hmm
You know, and they're kind of two different things. They kind of run hand in hand somewhat, but they're two kind of different things.
So where are you on the Batman gun rule? Because then I got a second follow-up question. We talked about this a little offcast, but where are you on that?
I don't like him using guns,
Mm.
but there are certain situations where it may be necessary. I mean, I think in Infinite Crisis or one of the ones he has the option to use a gun on somebody, he decides not to, and then I think on the Final Crisis he actually kills Darkseid with a gun.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's all kinds of different takes on it. I mean, it's one of those things. If it means saving the world, like you said, look at the nightmare scene. I think if it's a complete, with dystopian, world where
Apocalyptic or whatever. Yeah,
apocalyptic
yeah.
world, yeah, where you're basically it's kill or be killed type deal. Yeah, he's gonna use a gun then. I mean, that nightmare scene is not the normal Batman. So if people watched that movie and thought, oh, well, this is not my Batman. No, that's not anybody's Batman.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Batman that if the world was coming to an end, that's what Batman would be. Because guess what? That's what anybody would be if you didn't have Superman's powers, I feel.
hmm
But I mean, it's like I said, it's a real fine line. I don't like Batman using a gun, but certain situations I don't necessarily mind it. And then you
Yeah,
can have the argument of, projectiles being guns, stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, so it's just a lot of stuff.
I can admit the first time I saw BVS, I did feel that with that nightmare scene because it took me some like, oh right, this isn't really Batman, but it is like a weird. It's kind of like they say when you see red and green together, it's supposed to hurt your eyes. When I saw Batman with like an AK-47 shooting people, I was like, oh my god, like I was in my chair, like I'm like an old timer, like what's going on here? Like this is not my Batman. But then I
Yeah.
thought the only thing with BVS and the guy, even when he saves the Martha, that I kind of gave a pass because that's very out of Dark Knight Returns and whatnot. Like, does he maybe kill that guy? I don't know, but that's a debate. I think my only hang up in BVS with the gun thing is I always hated that first shot of the Trinity together. He was holding a gun, and again it's like some like kryptonite like bullet thing or whatnot. But
Right.
I just wish
Grenade
for that
launcher.
first
Yeah.
shot it was like because I remember seeing trailers and already I was getting antsy because there was like Zack Snyder was and now I love what Zack Snyder does with like when he did that commentary track. It's like, oh, those guys are fine. But to lead up, I could tell Batman was going to be a lot more violent because he was prepping the audience. People like myself, I still were not ready. But in little interviews, he was like, oh yeah, this very violent Batman. You have to wait and see. And I was like, oh no, this motherfucker's killing people, isn't he? And then when we got that first trailer and he got the gun, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what's going on here? Maybe kill him if he has a gun. But then even then, I was like, okay, it's like some kryptonite thing. But I always just wish that first shot didn't have that. That was my thing. And yeah, that's so I'm always fine with guns. I obviously prefer the more gadget guns. I don't ever want Batman to be like the Bob Kane one and be running around with a gun down the alley and whatnot. And that
Right.
it's a fun discussion to be like, that is the original version, right? But then it's like there's been now decades and decades upon these characters. They're that, like you said, that has to be, if you're looking at what's the original version, it's that one. But it's like that was for the times, right? For me, as far as guns and gadgets and killing, as I kind of said earlier, I always prefer not to use those because to me it's not that I don't want Batman to kill because like that's wrong. I just feel like it's in a way where like the Punisher kills because he's just like this brute who like just steamrolls things. I always want Batman to be outsmarting people,
Right.
outthinking people, out combating them. So when he uses the gun, I sometimes go, oh, like, is there a way that you could have not just wrote that in the story to be a batarang or be something like that? I do remember it was so funny the very first time in BVS when I watched. Luckily, it wasn't that, but when he shoots that tracker on Lex's truck or whatnot, I
Hmm.
swear to God, I thought he was going to start sniping people in the theater. And like I said, I was getting hot and bothered. I was like, what's going on here? He's going to start shooting. Like, this can't happen. And then as a little track, I'm like, oh, thank God. But every time I saw him with a gun, I was getting worried because I never like the nightmare scene. Like you said, it gets that point, but I never want that to be his go-to. I never
Right.
want that to be in his artillery, even though, like I said, in what was it in even Nolan series, he uses like a gadget like sort of gun thing at times, so it's funny to see over the years like what has changed, and that's one now. It's our kids will grow up on, they'd have to look into that original Bob Kane Batman to see that and I think that's what, like you said, many people don't look into it in the same way I had to after BVS. Like I remembered it, but I just didn't have it in that sense of like, oh yeah, he used the gun first, but it's like, yeah, I guess he did technically. So then I guess that argument of, what is your Batman? And that's
Oh yeah.
and I was gonna say, yeah, you kind of base your Batman off of Dark Knight Returns, right? That's kind of your go-to.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mine, and I guess that's what I'll ask you after, and I'll start with this. So my favorite comic of Batman is Long Halloween. I've talked about many times, but
Hmm.
I think that's the perfect mix, and that's one of the things we'll talk about the next episode with Robert Pattinson Batman. They talk about doing the more detective side. One thing I think that gets overblown a little bit is they say, "Oh, no one's ever done anything detective wise." I agree to a point, but in BVS, you have Ben Affleck who is looking into things. You have, as far as like what is that boat? You will probably know better than me. What is the boat? Or he thinks it's a boat, but it's a person or something like that.
Portuguese, the white Portuguese.
Yeah, you see him like mixing voices. He's doing his Bruce Wayne thing. In the Nolan series, when Batman gets that gun or that ballistics, it's a weird scene, but when he takes it from the wall and gets the fingerprints, even Michael Keaton's to an extent, he has like Jack Napier's. It seems stupid to have a picture of Jack Napier and then the picture of the Joker and be like, are these two the same? But I get what they're saying as far as, oh, it's never been a detective film. So you can make that point. But for me, I think the other Batmans have been doing detective stuff. And that's what I love about Long Halloween, where it's a perfect mix of, you got a bunch of villains. He's a detective, but also there's some action in there. Like with the Batman coming up, I want to be a detective movie, but I also don't want it to be like just one action scene and that's it. I don't want to be
Hmm.
the entire detective thing. That's kind of my favorite Batman, is kind of a mixture of all of them, and that's what Long Halloween brings. It's a great one. That wasn't my first comic book. My first comic book was Killing Joke, but I love that it was like a year span of just trying to find out this killer, and I love that. That is something that is not done as much as far as the movies. As far as the detective part is just a smaller part, so I am interested to see what happens if it's the main part of a story, which that story kind of is. But I like, you get the array of characters and villains. But what about for you? It's probably Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, it's probably Dark Knight Returns. It's just different. Sorry, it's just a different character take on it. I love Killing Joke. That was a great one. I like a lot of the more modern stuff, the more modern age too.
Mhm.
Like I'm a real big fan of Court of Owls. Is one of my favorite stories.
Scott Snyder's
Love
incredible.
that
Yeah,
one.
I've
Yeah.
loved honestly everything Scott Snyder has done, from
Mhm.
that to, we talk about the Batman Who Laughs. There's not he is. I said this to Chris. It might be hyperbolic, but just he's my favorite Batman writer. He hasn't been around that many years, but just everything he's put out, it just hits. It
Yeah.
hits me in the right. So that's kind of my almost go-to Batman, as far as if it's not Long Halloween. I love that edge he has him, because he makes his Batman kind of the Batman I like, as far as a little mentally off his rocker at times. I like a Batman who is maybe not completely sane. He's been doing this job for just too long, and maybe he should hang it up, but he's past that point where he can't hang it up. So
Yeah. Well, I think that the thing about Batman is I always want his biggest power to be his mind. I want him to be a step or two ahead of everybody, because that for me is like that's his biggest attribute. I mean, yeah, he's a great fighter, but any fighter can be beaten. But if you can stay a step ahead of somebody at all times, like he usually does, that's the kind of guy I like. That's the Batman I want to see, and we have seen versions of that, which is why I'm kind of waiting to give Pattinson's a chance, because I would like to see a little more detective work, a little more emphasis on the detective work.
Mhm.
But you're right. I don't want a whole movie of just detective work and one action scene. I want to see some good action too, because that's the other
Yeah.
part about Batman is he can kick some ass, and I want to see him kick people's ass. Period.
hmm
So,
Yeah, I know you and your boys are a big fan of the way he kicked ass in the Nolan trilogy. Which
oh yeah,
so in
2 miles an hour.
so so in your way that you defend the Marv scene, I'll defend the. you're never gonna catch me saying his action scenes are better than the Batflick one in BVS. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of, there's a grenade right there. My Batman would kick the grenade away, not kick the grenade at the guy, but that's for our episode 3 when we talk about killing. I love the scene. I love the way it's shot. It is like people say, it is almost like the Jim Lee Arkham style fighting. My always defense of, especially in the Batman Begins, the movie, when he is, it's Nolan is not the greatest at shooting action, but I think there's to a point where he's shooting and it's like these quick cuts and you're just seeing things and it's like a panorama shot. I think it's two things. Of one, in that first film, it's almost supposed to show that, oh, this is scares the villains or the goons, because it's like we don't even see what's happening. Now, again, from a movie standpoint, maybe that's not the greatest to watch, but for them, it's like, well, we can't even see what's happening. Like, this guy just dropped and all of us are down. What's happening?
I
And then
love
two,
that scene too, by the way.
oh
Sorry,
yeah, it's so good. And then two, my other thing is, I think it's just because it isn't that real world stance of, I don't know if those Ben Affleck moves or the Arkham moves would work in real life. They're very flippy, they're very all around. Where this looks like, again, I don't know how much of this would work, but I think that's what they're going for. Like, okay, we're gonna try and ground it. We're gonna make something different. And I think where I got appreciated for, if you ever watch the Batman Begins like special features, that's where people kind of throw like, oh, they just threw together some action scenes. No, if you may not like the action scenes, that's fine. But if you listen to Nolan and the choreography talks like why they chose this and why they chose this style for the movie, they wanted that type of style. Again, you don't have to like that, but I always think that they put that in there for a reason. So again, I'm not saying you have to like it, but there's things that I can see why I like it. And again, I'm a massive fan of the Dark Knight Rises fight scene with him and Bane. Not the last one. The last one, the war, is great, but I love, again, it's not as flashy as the Batflick one or even some like MCU fights, but I loved that it was just this lack of score. These two guys, it was the setting, and it was like kind of this kind of scary thing of just Batman's using all these tricks and nothing's working, and it was a great scene. So that's my mini defense for the Bale fighting scenes, which I know is a hot topic with people. So
yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't mind the Bale fighting scenes. There are some of those scenes in there that I think are absolutely fantastic. Like the one you were talking about, his first kind of scene, where he's busting the drug criminals. I think the taking the characters out and the guy who's going crazy and he's shooting and he's, where are you? And then all of a sudden he turns around, here. Like, that's Batman for me. I love that. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, I love that. I mean, for me, it's just comparing the two. Like, I obviously like the warehouse scene, that version of fighting better, but I still like the Nolan scenes. I just feel like at some points they're kind of slow. But you're right. The one, the first Bane one where he's fighting, that was a great scene. I love that there was no music in the background. There's no sound effects. It's like you're watching two guys fighting.
Yeah.
That was a really cool take on that. The battle scene at the end, the last one, it's okay. It's in a big crowd. I always have a problem watching any movie, and it's like this in every movie, where you have fights in huge crowds and everybody's fighting, and all of a sudden it's just these two guys and nobody's focused on these two guys but those two guys. It's like, that's not really the way it works, but okay. So,
there's nobody in that fight that sees Batman's gonna turn around like, I'm gonna help Bane and start shooting.
Right.
Like
Right.
it is just like this big. I agree with you, because with that scene, I love that scene, but it's like a tad bit awkward, because that's where it comes into the no killing thing, which is it's so funny, where you have like the cops and then you have all the criminals, and the inception of the idea is great, as far as we're going to have this massive war for Gotham. So I kind of always give it a pass, like, oh, I get what he's going for and I like it, but execution isn't the greatest, because like, so you have the criminals, you have the goons, or you have the criminals, the cops, and they're all going to run at each other. But there's this moment where they have, if you remember, they've like stolen other Batmobiles, right? So the bad guys have the Batmobiles as well. And then Batman with the bat, or it's remote controlled, flies down and he like takes out the vehicles and he flies away. Now, again, I'm not for Batman killing, but in that moment, I think it was warranted to maybe just fly down, also send a rocket at Bane, and then fly away. Like, it was one of these things where the war, or like, my favorite thing is like, all these cops are about to get killed, and what does the bat do? The bat flies away because it took some tanks away. So it's like, I get it, but in concept, it's like, these guys have a nuke, and literally they're gonna kill every child, man, woman, Gotham. It's like, you can mow down some of these fucking, especially I feel like in Dark Knight Rises, those people they're not just criminals, those are terrorists that they've taken over Gotham. They're probably some of the worst people in the world. It's like, you could definitely mow down some of these people, or at least like, there has to be a taser option on the bat, but it's just, I always laugh that he flies and takes out some vehicles, and then the crowd cheers and it just flies away. It's like, oh, thanks, Batman. And then Batman shows up to have his like standoff with Bane. But then again, for me, it's like, when you're watching it, it's like, oh, it's so cool. But when you think about like logistically, you're like, this doesn't make much sense at
Yeah.
all, you know. But it was fun, even like seeing. I love the setting of the snow, and just even seeing Batman in daytime, something that we don't see, and it feels like an oxymoron, like we shouldn't see it, but it's like every once in a while it's fun to see. So it's yeah,
Right.
again, another rabbit hole we went down here, but I'm excited to get into all this. Speaking of vehicles, what's your favorite Batmobile?
My favorite Batmobile is Snyder's
Hmm.
Batmobile. I think it looks awesome. I mean, I have a few that I wrote down here because there are a lot of really, really good looking Batmobiles, and there's a lot of different takes on it. But I love the way it looked. It was totally different than anything you've seen. I mean, it just looked awesome. I love the Tumbler too.
Yeah,
It's a different take, but you know, I'm a big Dark Knight Returns fan, so that tank kind of mode, I like that because that's kind of the Batmobile in that movie in that comic book. Um, and then, believe it or not, I really liked the Batman Forever Batmobile, the one that had the
it's so
blue light
cool.
up.
Yeah,
Like I remember seeing that when I was a kid, and I was like, "Man, that is an awesome Batmobile." I mean, I don't like the split wings in the back. You know, I'd rather just have one fin in the back. But I mean, you know, I'm not going to be too picky about it. But those right there for just live action, those are my top three Batmobiles, hands
hmm,
down. You know, I mean, the Batman '89 had that classic look. I think that's the one that when I was younger and I had toys, it was always that
yeah.
Batmobile look. But whenever you did the Batman Forever, that was when it first gave you that first change up of a Batmobile. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, you know? And then, you know, obviously, like I said, the Tumbler, but my favorite is Snyder's, obviously. That's one that I wish so badly I could just go sit in Snyder's Batmobile because I've gone to a bunch of different places where I've gotten to, well, just carnivals and fairs we have around here where they brought different Batmobiles in from movies and stuff. And I've got pictures of them in there. And I feel bad because most of the time when I'm in a Batmobile, I'm wearing a Marvel shirt. I have pictures of me in multiple Batmobiles wearing Marvel shirts.
You're
But
not a Batman fan. Look at
right.
you.
Because I didn't know it was going to be there. I'm like, dang, I should just keep a spare Batman shirt with me just in
You
case.
should, yeah,
That's one that I wish so badly I could do. And I love the concept of it too, because if you go back and look at the special effects of BVS, that was actually when he had that came up with the idea of that. I can't remember the guy who came up with the idea. It was basically just kind of drawn on a napkin. He was having lunch with Snyder, and it was just drawn on a napkin of kind of the basic idea. Snyder was like, I like it, do it, and he built it from there. And it's just he wanted something different, and they definitely gave you something different. You know, I loved it.
yeah.
What about you?
I go, like you said, maybe the classic, but I go the Keaton route. That's definitely because what I showed about earlier with the Long Halloween. I love that one where it is that like super long. The only thing I wish that it had, it was kind of a combination, is the Long Halloween one has like it's super long, but then in the back it just has this like almost gargoyle like bat design on it, and I love it.
Mm,
It's very like comic booky, but it just looks so kind of mythic. I'm kind of like the same when we'll talk about suits, other than one particular one. There's no Batmobile I dislike, you know, like
right. Hmm.
obviously it's not that cool in a live action setting, but even the 66 one, like it has its place in history. It doesn't look bad, you know, it's like it fits what that was going for at that time. But the other ones, the forever one, if we ever got back to a place where Batman was, which I don't know if I want, but if Batman was a bit more like comics schlocky and stuff like that, I'd want that back because I love the colors. I don't even mind like the tip wins. Yeah, the back is like a little too tall, like it's just like obnoxiously, but just
Yeah.
there's something about it. I don't know. It's visually striking. It catches your eye. Like all the other ones to me are really cool, but they're all like the black matte finish. They all could like blend in with a wall if you had it against like some concrete. But that one, it just stands out no matter where it is. So I love it. The Tumbler and Snyder's, I kind of put them together, even though Snyder's is like a slimmer one. The reason those are my top ones is because like I don't know, even the Tumbler, I like the idea of the Tumbler, and I love like the sound design and just the way it moves. But I think I like the ones that are a bit more comic booky because they look more divine. Those ones, even like the Batflick one, which is in this world that has Aquaman and Wonder Woman, I feel like it still looks a bit more realistic, I guess, for me. Like that's what they're going for to try and make it
Mm,
like it doesn't look too comic booky. It's the same way as the Nolan one. It looks very, it's kind of, it's not sleek, but it's just very compact and put together. Like it's ridges, it's not that divine. Like the Snyder one, I feel like it has lots of little loops and stuff like that and everything where I'm like, I have to think about same with the Tumblr. Like I guess that's the best way to put it. I could draw you very poorly. I could draw you the Michael Keaton one or even the Batman Forever one, where the Tumblr and Snyder one, I'd probably have a trouble with like the shape
that's a
and
good
everything
point.
like that. That's kind of
Yeah.
my thinking as far as like I couldn't get that on a napkin like that guy did. So that's why the Keaton one I kind of ledged to. I want to get your opinion on this because I'm still very iffy. What are you thinking about this passing one? This like hybrid car, like what's going on with this? What do you think about that?
To be honest with you, I've got to look it up right now because I haven't seen the Pattinson Batmobile.
At
I
all?
didn't even, yeah, not at all, dude. I've been out of it for the last
Really?
couple of weeks. Yeah, so
Oh,
hang on,
but
I'll
no,
look it
this
up
came
right
out
now.
months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't
Oh
remember.
no. Look,
I remember seeing pictures of him on a motorcycle, but I don't remember seeing the picture of the actual Batmobile. Hold on
it's
one
funny
second.
what
I'm
you
gonna pull
missed.
that
Yeah,
up.
you look it up. So yeah, it's weird because it looks semi like the animated series, but like very short and whatnot. Oh, this is exciting. Get to see Greg's first reaction to the Rob Pattinson Batmobile. But yeah, it is. It's definitely a different
Oh,
look.
I did see
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's
yeah. I was
right.
gonna say, I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
you would have. Yeah, it's just
yeah.
been a while because obviously, like with COVID, everything's been delayed, right? So they haven't really been pumping out new stuff. So,
Uh, I mean, it's all right. It looks like a souped up Charger.
mhm.
You know, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, generally, most Batmobiles, I guess, not in the last of recent, have kind of some kind of symbolism of Batman in the front, like a bat suit, the eyes, the ears, something. But this one doesn't. I think the biggest problem I have with Pattinson's Batman so far, but I'm still giving him a chance because I haven't seen anything yet, so I don't want to
Mhm.
judge it yet. Is it doesn't look like something that a billionaire would put together.
Yeah.
Like if I had unlimited amounts of money, I wouldn't be walking around in a suit with what looks like Sharpie pens on my arm. I wouldn't be driving what looks
Wow.
like a Charger that has some, slight modifications to it. I mean, just, you know, it doesn't. I wouldn't be walking around with something that looks like a Converse shoe in my face, leather shoe in my
Wow.
face.
Wow. Wow.
So,
I can
but
give
this
you
is
that
supposed to
count.
be
Yeah.
that could feed into the story. Like I said, I don't want to judge it yet because it could be part of the story. If they're doing like a year one type thing where he's just becoming Batman, I'm sure Batman wasn't Batman from day one, just like Superman wasn't Superman from day one type deal.
Mhm.
So I mean, it may feed into the story, but just initial looks. I mean, it looks good. I drive it,
Yeah.
but
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't look
Yeah.
like a Batmobile to me. You know?
Yeah, that one is where see the suit I'm on the other side because the suit I love. I like the armor plate. I like even you're talking about these pens on the wrist. Like you and me are so different on that too. So it'll be funny to see throughout the months. But like I love like the little gauntlets is going on. The car I'm on the other side where I got to see it in motion and in film. That's something to me
Right.
where like looking at I love like visually like the way they like just even took those pictures everything like that. Like I love that. I hope every Batman from now on we're gonna get a picture of Batman standing by the Batmobile because I feel like it wasn't in that in the past, but you got Batflix and now you got Passons. I hope every time the Batmobile's revealed, it's like that.
That's like his
My,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't know. Obviously, hopefully DC fan we get some. We're going to talk about this more episodes, so we won't go in deep. But there's been these rumors as far as the reason he looks like this or it looks like that is because he is a billionaire, but he's not using his funds exactly because he doesn't want to be traced. So he's like using what he has exactly, which like obviously still a lot of money to use, but like he doesn't have like access to his full like potential of money or something like that. I don't know if
Hmm.
I buy that because like I don't know if you need to add that onto the story, but it is. But remember, Greg, they're saying it's not year one, it's year two. You know, that's
Oh
their
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's which they're cop out of. They want to do an origin story, but they didn't want to do an origin story. So like, oh, we'll do it year two. So I'm
Right.
yeah, I don't
365 days later makes the difference.
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all different now. This is an origin story, but you're still going to see his parents get gunned down, promise you. So,
Oh yeah.
let's see what else do we have here. We talked about movie. Who's your favorite sidekick? Because this is something that's talked about. Everybody has their own favorite Robin or Batgirl. So, who's your go-to as far as let's say they make a Batman movie in the future, they're going to have a sidekick. Who's your go-to to put in there?
I mean, my go-to is Dick Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
He's my favorite Robin. He's the most common Robin you see in just about any movie or a lot of older comics. And I mean, he was the first. And I love the character he becomes in Nightwing. It's just he's a great bat. He's a great Robin. He's got the best backstory I think of any Robin.
Yeah.
But yeah, for if you're just talking strictly a Robin, I like Dick Grayson the most, man. What he becomes is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nightwing is a character that needs to be developed more, even though he's been developed quite a bit. I want to see more of him on big screen, on live action. I mean, Titans did a great job with him. The way he's portrayed, the actor that plays him, it's absolutely fantastic. I think does a great job.
Yeah.
I want to eventually see this guy on the big screen. I don't want to see I would rather see a Nightwing than a Robin in a future Batman movie. Even though I know if you're starting out Batman earlier, you've got to have Robin before you have Nightwing. But I really want to see a Nightwing on screen, and Batgirl. I like Batgirl. But I've never really looked at Batgirl as like one of Batman's partners. Like she's part of the family. They've
Mm-hmm.
worked together sometimes, but I don't really look at her as part of the family. And there's, like Robin, there's been multiple Batgirls, even down to like Stephanie Brown, who was a Robin and a Batgirl type deal.
Yeah.
So but very small stories with them. But I mean, and I guess next, if it wasn't Dick Grayson, it'd probably have to be Damian Wayne, and that's just because of his trails that I've seen with him in a lot of the animated movies and just some of the comics I read with him. Is that's Batman's son? Like I would think that if you're going to have a great Batman sidekick, his son is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and don't forget, she's not necessarily a sidekick, but soon we'll have Ryan Wilder as a new
Yeah.
Batwoman.
Oh, dang
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I missed my joke. I was going to say that. I was going to say Ryan Wilder. And I was thinking about that earlier. I'm going to say that when he asked that question. I totally forgot to say it.
We were on the same line. Like, yeah, so for well, and I was gonna say too, if you're such a big fan of the Snyderverse, if that would have continued, you wouldn't have got your boy Dick Grayson on screen because your boy decided to kill off
I
Dick
was
Grayson.
irritated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really irritated about that. And then, I've taught people about it and like, well, he can make his own decisions. You're right, he can. I just don't like that decision.
Hmm.
And because for me, that means you can't have a Nightwing in that universe, even though it doesn't look like that universe is going in the future. But then again, I guess if you were to if you say, well, he can change whoever he wants to be the one who was killed, even though the joke's on you, killed by the Joker. That's obviously Jason Todd. No,
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
there's no not that's exactly the way it happens in the comics. I don't know why you would change that, but there was like, well, they can make Nightwing a different character, but I don't want Nightwing to be a different character. Just like I don't want Bruce Wayne to be a different character. I
mm,
mean, Batman to be a different character. I want to see Bruce Wayne as Batman. Not saying I care who plays him, but I want them to be Bruce Wayne.
yeah,
Or if you're not going to do that, then do a Terry McGinnis. But that's a Batman Beyond. That's not Batman.
yeah.
I want if you're going to do Batman, it needs to be Bruce Wayne. If you're going to do Nightwing, it needs to be Dick Grayson. Just in my opinion, if you're going to change it, it can still be good, just not the way I would go with it.
Yeah, I'd heard you on SC talking about that because everyone was giving you crap like, oh, you can change everything. And I agree with them as far as you can't technically, I've said this all the time before. If someone gets a script or be allowed to write a script, once they get that keyboard, they can change anything, right? And it's their
Mm-hmm.
story. But I always say there's certain things where it's just like, I just don't like it. And I'm one of those saying in the Dick Grayson too. Like, I completely understand the whole, well, it's his vision. He can change it. It's not the comics. I go, oh, yeah, you're right. But I can still go, I don't like it's Dick Grayson. I remember when that came out. It always still like is a in my craw of like, oh, why did it have to be Dick? Just say Dick's missing somewhere. Like, why? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just like he doesn't have to be dead. But and it's weird because years ago they like said they were developing some Nightwing movie. I don't think it's happening anymore. So I always wondered like, how was that gonna work if he was dead? I still honestly, my prediction is if let's say for somehow after the Snyder cut goes well and this kind of Snyderverse continues or some of Batflick, I honestly think they would retcon that, to be honest,
Yeah,
because they've
I think
never
they would
on
too.
screen said, "Oh, Joker, who killed Dick Grayson?" It's just a dead Robin suit, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time. I know me and Nathan get into it, but like I always find in Wonder Woman when BVS is like, "Oh, she's been gone for years and doesn't care about man," but here she is in Wonder Woman in 1984. She's helping man out all over the place. So you can be like, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's no cameras and like, well, it's against the gods," but I'm always like, "Yeah, but like." And every Marvel's done that. Like, look at Age of Ultron, the way it's set up. Thor Ragnarok. Thor has this vision of all this dark stuff and everything, and then we get to Thor Ragnarok. It's a fucking joke fest, So it's like
Yeah.
Star Wars, everything. Like, if something doesn't fit the story going forward and they haven't like right stated it, they'll just go like, oh, that was maybe that, but this is the real version. So I think if you ever
Right.
got more Snyderverse, it would be or like even then if it like let's say he wasn't directing but people were continuing that vision, I think you would get Dick Grayson and they could easily just say, oh, him and Batman had a falling out and he's gone. Like that was to me, that's how I always took it when I saw those BVS trailers, which that was one of the most I always say Logan and the BVS Comic Con trailer are my two favorite trailers of all time because that trailer got me so excited. It was showing everything. That was before the Doomsday one. But just I remember when he walks past that suit and he looks at it, and we saw in a trailer, and it's just like, man, they are world building so good here. And I always took it as just, okay, that's Jason Todd. And maybe because he's just like killing people now or he's more darker, Dick wasn't cool with that. I know people have made that point of like, oh, Dick Grayson would have stopped him, but it's like, I don't like he would have definitely talked to him and said this isn't right, but at the end of the day, I don't think he was going to stop Batman. Like I
Right.
just think he would have said, well, I can't be a part of this. I'm not going to go down this path with you. But I don't think he was going to be out there every day like trying to fight Bruce and everything. Like I've never seen Dick Grayson that, but yeah, I'm the same as you, Dick Grayson. I know it might be some people like, oh, it's because he's the first, but it's just I've always gleamed on him, and I agree with you. Probably next would be Damian Wayne. Jason Todd's there, but because of Red Hood, I don't really ever count it. Like he had his years as Robin, but I don't ever count Red Hood as like a sidekick. Red Hood is like the same thing as Batgirl. He's part of the family, but he's just such kind of his own man. But it's Dick Grayson because Damian Wayne and him, it's funny because they are father and son, but I always feel Dick Grayson and Bruce have much more of a father and son dynamic just because obviously Damian Wayne missed out almost like a decade of being with Bruce, right? So you can see they're slowly always becoming more father and son, but there always feels like there's such a strained relationship between Damian and Bruce because of for obvious reasons. He wasn't there for any of his childhood, right? Where Dick, obviously Dick had his parents, but then when Dick lost everything, this guy was here to bring him up and gave him a purpose, not only just
Mhm.
like adopting him, but also giving him this purpose of being Robin, a sidekick, stopping crime. So I've always loved this kind of fatherly bond they have with him. I don't view it as some people view it as like a brotherly bond. I don't. It could be, I guess, a big brother, but I just look at it is that is his really his adoptive son. And it's just I love when they fall out because they use it's usually Batman's done something a little skeevy, and it's always something that's I feel like anytime Batman's done something where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with this, Dick will call him out and be like, why would you do that, or why did you do that, you know? And I always go, yeah, I feel the same way. And and it's funny because I know tons of people love Tim Drake. I've never, because I guess maybe my fact of not reading that much Teen Titans, maybe that's why I watched the animated show back in the day. But I think maybe not reading that, I never have the same love for Tim Drake as other people do. You know, I some people always put him as number one, and for me, it's Dick Grayson. That's still my guy, and I agree with you too. I obviously who knows about Affleck, but my hope too is if this pass and thing works out, like I would love to see a Bat universe. I've always said this the same way X-Men could be its own universe. The way the
Mhm.
MCU works with it's like, 10 years of films, you could have that with just Batman, not even DC.
Mhm.
You could have Batman where he meets Batgirl, he meets Dick Grayson, you bring in Dame Wayne, you bring in the Red Hood. There's so many stories that are still not done. That's why when people always go, oh, another Batman, it's like if you read comics or look into the character, there's still so much we haven't seen on screen, which is crazy to think when he's been around since 89 as far as live action, I guess 66, but there's so many stories, great stories we haven't seen. So I would love one day to have, I've always pitched it that I want someone to make a Batman franchise the same way Harry Potter did, as far as
Yeah.
you meet Batman early on and then it's like a 7-8 film arc of like all these different characters you could spin out. And I have my fingers crossed. I know Warner Brothers just announced they have some like new first look deal with Matt Reeves. So anyway we get, I would just love more Bat Family and more of that type of stuff. And I hope to see Dick Grayson. Hey, I like Chris O'Donnell. I think he did a good job, but I'd love to see more on the big screen. I agree with the other guy on Titans. He does a phenomenal job. He knocks it out of the park. So
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
the final question, as far as just this little roundup, something people love talking about. What is your favorite villain or villains of Batman: The Dark Knight? What do you got for us?
I think you and I are going to have the same answer for this one, man. We're both huge fans of the Joker. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I love the Joker. He is Batman's negative. He's like the Reverse Flash, the Flash. He is the guy that's there. He's kind of his reason for existence. I mean, and he's always going to be there. I think that Batman's had multiple chances to kill the Joker and doesn't. And for that reason, I mean, you could look at the Killing Joke. I mean, they went a different direction in the movie as they did an actual book, I think, but.
Mm-hmm.
Joker's always that guy, man. Like he's always going to be there. He's always behind something. He's like the Lex Luthor for Batman. Like if there's something going on, he's probably got something to do with it. And I love that character. I love the way that he's been portrayed on screens in a bunch of different ways because he's one of those guys that's like Batman. You can portray him in a bunch of different ways, and it's not wrong. It's just different. It's how you look at it. Is he a guy? Is he a mindset? Like what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Even the Joker in the Gotham series, like the way they did that, it's just amazing the way they put these things out there. And you can have different types of feelings about different Jokers, damage tattoo in the forehead, stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I like Jared Leto's Joker. I thought Jared Leto's Joker was a great Joker for that franchise. Didn't necessarily agree with some of the images that he had. Like I didn't like, you said I know you don't like the damage tattoo. I don't like the damage tattoo either, but it wasn't enough to throw me off. I think we didn't get enough of that Joker to really appreciate him and love him. He should have been a way bigger role in that movie, and I think we would have liked him a lot more. All
Mm-hmm.
you really saw was kind of a psychotic few scenes of him, and it kind of did disrespect to him. But for me, Joker's number one, and then I don't know. I put Catwoman down too because she is a villain, but she's an ally. It's kind of one of those things. It's a back and forth. She's a lover, this and that. I mean, they've even gotten married in the comics before. I'm a huge Catwoman fan of any Batman character that has their own comics that I read. It's Catwoman. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's actually one of the only comic books that I still go to the comic book store and buy is Catwoman comics because I just love the character and I love how she walks that line because
Yeah.
it's almost exactly what Batman does, but Batman leans a little more towards the good side. She leans a little more towards the bad side, and it's why they get along so well together and why they fight so much. But I love Catwoman, one of my favorites. And then, dude, Batman has such a huge rogues gallery. It's hard not to love any of them. And then probably next would be Harvey Dent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like him too, which is why I think Dark Knight was one of the best Batman movies out there is because it has two of my favorite villains in there, and they did such a good job with those characters. Aaron Eckhart does that's his name, right? Aaron
Yeah,
Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart. Yeah.
Yeah, does such a great job with that character. Like, I mean, just amazing. Played that
Yeah.
role so well. The look was perfect. I mean, same way with I can't remember his name now. Joe played Joker.
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger. Yeah, amazing. You know,
Yeah.
just totally nailed. They owned those roles. They took them, and I think they put those two levels, those two characters, for somebody who's not a fan, as big of a fan of the genre, or more of a general audience fan. They put those two characters on the next level for a lot of people. You know, I mean, they really nailed those roles. And of the three, those three are probably my three favorite Batman villains slash acquaintances that he's always with. Because even sometimes Batman and Joker, there's been situations where they work together.
Yeah.
Before. So, I mean, it happens. But, and obviously Harvey Dent, you know, he worked with Harvey Dent. But yeah, those three right there. And like I said, I have a whole list of characters, but I'm only going to pick three because there's so many of them. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a whole lot of different stuff as this podcast goes on. So I'll save more for the next show.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I did three, and my first two are the same as yours. Joker, I've talked about tons on this podcast. He's my go-to. It's kind of, again, what I talked about in the Flashpoint review, where he is just kind of this moldable clay, where he can kind of be anything. Like you point out, there's all these versions. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Jared Leto's Joker. I always, because I know you and many people take that argument of, I do hope there is an haircut, and I hope we see more. But my always point is, for me, and you go back, I could have got on board with all the other tattoos. The damaged one, yeah, that was a bit far. And even to my point, David Ayer has admitted, he said, yeah, maybe we did go a bit too far with that one. So in retrospect, he might have been like, yeah, because I think at the time you're like, yeah, we'll do this, and damage. And then I think when you see it on screen, you're kind of like, okay, maybe it was a step too far. And I think for me, I always worried. I remember when I saw BVS the first time in the Luthor scene, when he branded him and Luthor was bald, me and my friends were so convinced in that moment he was going to brand him, like put the bat symbol right on his forehead. And again, I was freaking out, but luckily it didn't happen. He just punches the wall, and that's his turning point. But with Jared Leto's Joker, I do want to see more, and I want the fans to see more. I guess for me, it's like I always thought performance-wise he'd do great, and I always use the example, and some people hate this, and that's fine. I always use the example of Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs is in that movie for about 12 minutes, and he won an Academy Award, and everyone talks about how this is a great performance. Now, you're right as far as like he is cut to crap in that movie. There's lots of stuff, but even the stuff that he is in, and I think Chris said this on SE, it's like, I think if you see more, it's never going to convince people like me that even with the look, I could have got past as long as I loved the performance. And for me, I always say this, and if you're listening to this and you're a big DCU fan, you're going to hate it. I always say it feels like an SNL parody of the Joker, like they do a skit, and that for me it's a tough thing. But I still even wish that, and that's why I hope it happens in anime form, I would still like to know the story of him and Ben Affleck's Joker and Batman, right? Like that has to be to me such a different dichotomy in those two. So I hope whether it's a graphic novel, animated series, that could continue. I want that to happen with everything. I want them to do a graphic novel on the Robin Blake character from Dark Knight Rises. It's just like, it's not going to hurt anybody if you do this graphic novel, like a what if sort of series. So I would love to see stuff like that. But yeah, Joker is my guy. Joker is because he is just the other side of the coin, but he's like the most opposite. You have something like you talk about Reverse Flash or other characters where it's like, oh, this is clearly just the bad version of this person. This isn't, because Joker isn't anything like Batman, but it's just the two extremes, right? Like Batman's so high up and Joker's so low, and Joker's this character that is just, as far as fiction out there, when you have a character that is just bad and just crazy, it usually doesn't work. Or like it works, but it's not like a Thanos or something like that, where it's like, oh, I understand this villain and I see his point of view. You never see the Joker's point of view, right? He's just an insane man, but somehow they still have made that entertaining, whether it's his antics, whether it is like we talked about Scott Snyder's Batman, as far as like the Batman Who Laughs, stuff like that, something unique like that, or the way he is in Death of the Family, not Death in the Family, Death of the Family. He's literally like obsessed and kind of in love with Batman, and the reason he's trying to take out his sidekicks is because he just wants it to be back to him and him. He doesn't want these other people around. He just wants it to be the Batman and Joker story. So there's so many different versions, and such a great character. Obviously, yeah, he's my favorite, but I got Catwoman up there as well because she shares similarities as far as Joker, as far as just the importance in Batman's life, but for a much different perspective. It's one of these things that they always have a great dynamic, and that's one of the things that have made me very excited for the upcoming Batman film. Because like I said, I was like, year two, kind of another origin film. I don't know if we need that, but I'm always down to see another Catwoman because I feel like there's still lots of versions we haven't seen. I felt like in Batman Returns that was perfect, but there's still like it ended on a cliffhanger because if you look into history, Pfeiffer was supposed to come back for a third one. So I always feel, oh, there's more we're supposed to get. And in Dark Knight Rises, I like that Catwoman, but that movie had like 10 million different plots going on. So I felt like we never got enough time to really sit with her for a while and learn her. So I like that start of, let's say this is a trilogy. I like the very first one. We have Catwoman or Selena Kyle. That means we have a potential to grow and for her to stick around and not just be a one and done. So I'm
Right.
always down for more Catwoman. And the third one was tough, and Two-Face he'd probably be my fourth. So I went a little bit different route, but I love Two-Face. Again, I'm with you as far as some people have the problems with, oh, he feels he's shoehorned in Dark Knight. No, I feel it was perfect as far as the way
Yeah.
he was used in that escalation. But for me, another reason again why with the Batman pass, since I was like, again, I'm not that excited, but then more stuff came out. It's the Riddler, man. I'm very
That was my
excited.
fourth.
Yeah. So we're very similar. That's what I mean. We're very similar in what we like. We just like in different ways. It's like I've talked about the cooking analogy. We like steak, but we like it cooked a little bit different. And for me, the Riddler, it's probably because I'm a fan of stuff like the Saw horror franchise. I love like that is the villain like a Batman where it's the complete mind where he has no bronze. Even the Joker who's not bronze, at some point he can get crazy. He has a bunch of knives and he can at least do some damage to Batman, right? Riddler, no. There's been many adaptations of Riddler where he's just an old guy with a cane that could literally just take like just an elbow jab and he's done. He's in a coma, so the Riddler poses no threat whatsoever to the body, but it's all mind, and that's what I love. And I'm hoping, because I know you're a fan of Jim Carrey's Riddler, I like Jim Carrey Riddler enough, but I just sometimes feel it's a bit too Jim Carrey. I wish he toned it down a little bit. So I'm very excited for the Batman, and I'm very excited to see what they do. And I just like that idea of Batman's the world's greatest detective. What happens when you have someone pushing that envelope to the nth degree as far as this guy leaving riddles, leaving questions, leaving mysteries? And I just love that in some of the comics, animated shows, it does make you think, whether it is just some stupid riddle made for kids or whatnot, but it's just, I like that character. I like the look of that character. So I'm excited we get more, hopefully next year.
Well, the thing is, the greatest thing about Batman's villains is like you can see a little bit of Batman in every villain. Like you said, with the Joker, we look at it as kind of the overall encompassing, like the reverse of Batman. But you look at like the Riddler, he's that guy who's always a step ahead of you. He keeps you thinking. You've got to chase what he's doing. Like you're not going to be able to tell what's going on with him. He's got that kind of Batman mindset where he's going to beat you with his mind. The Two-Face, the dual personalities, where he's this by this, and then he's this, and you don't know what kind of guy you're getting out of that. I mean, the Penguin with the tragedy of the families, like there's all kinds of things. Like every little Batman villain has a little bit of Batman in them, and I think that's what makes them so great. Like you said, Catwoman the same kind of way. She walks that same line he does. She just kind of steers a little more to the right than Batman does, or a little more, a little more to the left than Batman does on that one. So I mean, they're all great characters. The thing with Joker too is I look at all the live action Jokers, and for me, when I look at a character in a superhero movie and I try to judge a villain, it's somebody that if I saw walking down the street, would I want to mess with that guy? And like would I be scared to walk by you? Would I kind of change my direction to avoid you, or would I just keep going? Jack Nicholson's Joker, I'd walk right by him. I'd probably bump shoulders with him and not even care, not even apologize. Okay, Jared Leto's Joker and Heath Ledger's Joker, I would probably stop and go a different direction, not even get close to those guys. Just the way they look, the way they act, and both of those characters. I know Jack Nicholson says he did the same thing too, but I know that they devoted themselves to that role. Like I know Will Smith was talking about filming Suicide Squad. He said he never met Jared Leto until they did the movie premiere. That the entire time that Jared Leto was on set, in scene, and he ever saw him, that he was in the Joker's, like he was in character. Never came out of character. He devoted himself to that character. I think that's why he was so upset about what's going on with that. With the new Jokers coming out and everything, which Joaquin Phoenix did a great job of that movie. I loved it. But once again, that's a guy that if he was walking down the street, I probably wouldn't be in fear just from his look. Now he's a psycho, so I wouldn't want to mess with him. But just looking at him, I would be like, oh, it's a guy in a clown suit, whereas like Heath Ledger and Jared Leto, man, those guys, I would not want to get anywhere close to them. I'd take my kids, get in the car, we're going a different direction. We're not playing in this park right now.
Yeah, so. And that's the thing that's great, because I agree with you about the Jack thing. I think he devoted himself as much, but he a lot of times is Jack Nicholson in that role. That's what I did love about Joaquin Phoenix Joker, where you're right, he doesn't look like that scary Joker, but he's that trusting guy where you're like, oh, this guy'd be fine. And then like that scene where his buddy and he comes over with the little person and then he just straight out murders him. And there's that moment where the little guy's like trying to leave, and you don't know, is he going to kill him or let him leave? That's what I love about the Jokers. Even with
Yeah.
Jack's Joker is like this really playful. He's like the animated series where he's wild and he's having a good time. He says all like it always says, but it's about chaos. But to me, it's also this guy that that's why I prefer that version of Joker, not just because the acting, but I like that version of the Joker. He might be a little insane, but it's definitely an act. You can tell in the Dark Knight that he's wearing this paint just to throw people off. You know, in that movie, when people call him crazy, he says, "I'm not crazy." Where other Jokers go, "Oh, I am crazy. I love being crazy," but he's like, "I'm not crazy at all. I don't know what you're talking about." So I always love that where it's like, "Oh, the Joker's more than he appears to be." Jared Leto's Joker is like kind of this mobster gang, can kind of do any, like he could snap at a moment, which, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the scene in the dance club, but it shows, okay, he could just kind of switch gears. And that's why I like a Walking Phoenix Joker, where it is he's unpredictable to the point where he doesn't even know what he's going to do. And that's where all those Jokers do show different versions of Joker, you know, and that's where even with Walking Phoenix, once he becomes the clown, like you said, he's not that imposing, but that's sometimes the point of the Joker, where you look at this guy who's just dressed as a clown, you go, oh, why is this Batman's great on paper? If you're just seeing it's like, why is Batman's greatest rival not Bane, this big hulking guy, Ra's al Ghul, this like assassin, Deathstroke? Why is it this guy in a clown costume that has like no physical attributes? He's as skinny as a pencil, but it's just something that he can get in the craw of Batman. Batman too, as far as the detective side, more so than Riddler. That's just a case he can never crack, right? He can figure out eventually what Joker's going to do, but that's always the problem with the Joker. He's so unpredictable that he can't see him making those moves. So he is, but he is a great rogue ally. Like you said, I think one day we'll do an episode on, but whether it's like Clayface, Penguin, even just to little goons like a Firefly or something like that, they're all like, people have said it, but it is true that him and Spider-Man have the best villains because just the variety of them, how different they are, but how it's tough for me to make the lists. You know, my 1 and 2 are always same with Joker and Catwoman, but the fourth slot I could easily, or the third slot, I could easily cycle many characters in there. You know, like Ra's al Ghul, I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a huge fan of, he's a villain, but he like completely respects Batman, and he's never looking at Batman in like an adversary way, just in a way of, I have to take you down because you're in my path. But he's always like trying to recruit him. Like a guy that's trying to recruit you and want you to marry and impregnate his daughter, you know, that's a different type of cat, but that's what he wants. You know, he doesn't want to kill Batman. He wants Batman to be like his son, which is a, you know, it's a strange dichotomy, but again, it's something unique. So just great villains overall. Did you have anything else to say?
No, man, that's about it.
Well, I think that's it. We answered all those questions, right? That I threw out there for kind of a mini get to know us, right? I didn't leave anything. Okay.
No.
No. Okay.
I
Well,
think, everything, we cover everything on the list you said. So
yeah. Anything else to say? This is the first episode, hopefully the first of many, which I think I'm already excited by our first conversations. As far as, again, we have some rat holes, but we'll have dedicated topics. Like I said, the next one will be about past, and it's just be like, as a preview DC fandom, and then after that we're going to do like a really, if you liked our conversations about the differences, BVS and Nolan killing whatnot, I'm gonna prepare a video as far as like, it's gonna have all the kills, and we're gonna talk about the killing, but we're also gonna look at some of these kills and talk about, oh, like, you know, what is the line of this? Like, clearly Keaton strapping dynamite to a man and pushing him down a well, that's definitely killing somebody. There's no ways around it. You know, that's a thing. So we have tons of fun stuff planned, but anything else to say before we get out of here?
No, man, I'm just glad you asked me to come do this, man. It's been a really fun time. You're one of the biggest Batman fans I know, and it's always a great time to talk about Batman and all the great stuff with Batman. And doing it with somebody like you, man, is fantastic. It's been a really fun time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Likewise, man. I'm very excited. Like I said, I need someone of bat quality to do this show with, and I can't wait to do more episodes. And probably in the future, yeah, if you have anything, if you like this episode, let us know. You can review it or tweet at us or message us. But in the future, we'll probably take some listener questions and stuff like that. But this one, at the time of recording this, we haven't even announced it to, you know, the public that this is happening yet. So it's all incognito. So it's eventually, once we get rolling, we'll have some interaction. But let us know what you thought about this episode. We thank you very much for tuning in. All the links are down below as far as Geek First and where to find Greg and the Geek Ultimate Alliance and SE. All that stuff is there. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we promise you it'll not be boring.
Yes, sir.